circles in the moonlight, me and us boys have been around. Show the girls a little good time, spinning tires in the soft ground. Crop circles round a campfire, we're gonna smolder a little grass. But watch out, Farmer Johnson's got salt shot to pepper you. Farmer Johnson's got a shotgun, running naked through a cornfield. Something came in the middle of the night, stole moonshine from a stick. There's burn marks in a circle, strange signs upon the ground. He thinks the aliens have touched down in our little town. We know. Crop circles in the moonlight, me and us boys have been around. Show the girls a little good time, spinning tires in the soft ground. Crop circles round a campfire, we're gonna smolder a little grass. But watch out, crazy Johnson's got salt shot to pepper you. Johnson took his hat off, open mic at the town hall. Said we're visitors sitting among us from somewhere beyond the stars. You don't know them cause they like trouble, they drink our beer, they like fun. I even seen them with the mayor's daughter, driving around in a local boy's truck. Oh, but we know. Crop circles in the moonlight, me and us boys have been around. Show the girls a little good time, spinning tires in the soft ground. Crop circles round a campfire, we're gonna smolder a little grass. But watch out, crazy Johnson's got salt shot to pepper you. He says they're gonna beam us up, take us in our trucks. They're gonna beam us up, experiment on us. They're gonna beam us up, take us in our trucks. They're gonna beam us up, experiment on us. Crop circles in the moonlight, me and us boys have been around. Show you girls a little good time, spinning tires in the soft ground. Crop circles round a campfire, we're gonna smolder a little grass. But watch out, crazy Johnson's got salt shot to pepper you. Yeah, girls, we're gonna beam you up, take you in our trucks. Beam you up, experiment on love. We're gonna beam you up, take you in our trucks. We're gonna beam you up, experiment on love.
Welcome, Rockanites and others. This is Gary Wheeler, your host for the next hour, and you are the zone of high strangeness, a place where the unbelievable is believed until proven otherwise. And that song you just heard was called Crop Circles by Dean Brody, a well-known country western star and singer. And, if he knows about crop circles, you would hope others would as well. But it's one of those subjects that, as incredible as it is, most of the general public doesn't even know it's happening. We'll talk more about that as the show goes on. Also, I want to mention that callers are welcome, as always. And anybody's can feel free to call. I want you to know you'll be on air immediately when I answer your call, and especially interested in people with any kind of UFO experience themselves, or if they have stories of others who they know who have experienced such an event. First names only, please, or if you just want to remain anonymous, that's fine as well. Also, I have my cell phone here, which one can use to text me if you have any questions and you refer not to come on to the radio station. The cell phone number is 207 691 2110. And get back to the radio station number here is 207 593 0013. That's 593 0013. I'd like to give a shout out to my daughter Laura and my son Shaw, who's visiting from Switzerland for Laura's wedding, which brings me to the point that next Sunday I will not be here. I will be at my lovely daughter's wedding, and we will be certainly partying down. And I will have my new clothes on. Nobody will recognize me. And my beard trimmed and my haircut. And I look quite dapper, I must say. So I'm looking forward to that. So no show next Sunday, but I'll be back the following week. And we'll continue our look into crop circles. Since, this is crop circle season, the wheat is getting high and the crop circles are happening on a pretty regular basis. Every few days there's a new one. Most exciting. And the best place to view them is a website by this woman who takes a lot of photos of the crop circles. And she has a website that covers crop circles since 1990. And she has them all cataloged. So it's a great site to research this whole topic. And that address, web address is www.lucy, L-U-C-Y, Pringle, Pringle.co.uk. And it'll be a delight for you to go there and see these amazing designs that are put in these fields. Crop circles are really the 800-pound gorilla in the corner of the room when it comes to verifying the existence of aliens communicating with human beings. As we will talk about more later, the scientific proof as well as individual stories, there's really no doubt that this is taking place. To mention again, the show is brought to you by Diverse Landscapes here in Rockland, and Eric Best, who's an author, a business consultant, and a good friend. I'll remind you, you're listening to WRFR 93.3 FM in Rockland and 99.3 in Camden. Also streaming on our website, wrfr.org, as well as there's podcasts there of past shows, mine and others. Today, we're going to continue with the end of the audio I started last week, which was a conversation between Stephen Greer, who is sort of the guru of ufologists, and Colin Andrews, who is a crop circle expert, been studying them for years, and he's actually the person who coined the phrase crop circles. And their interview is their conversation is very enlightening about their thoughts about the meaning of these crop circles. And this conversation took place on a Pooja radio station, which is a internet station, which you have to pay to join, but it's well worth it because there's lots of extremely interesting programs they have there. That's Pooja, P-U-J-A. Then I will have a second video, which I will get into introducing when this one is over. So here we go. This is Stephen Greer and Colin Andrews.
And it does. So one of the things that you find is that there is something happening that is not only on the level of the conscious mind, but that comes through all the other dimensions of the body of light and the physical body, because what I've come to learn, and I learned this when I was 17 and had a near-death experience, is that the physical body doesn't manifest the mind, but the mind and the body of light manifest the physical body.
Yeah.
And so that's how remote healings can take place and all of this sort of thing. Well, it makes complete sense if we're dealing with civilizations and intelligences that understand the science of consciousness and understands transdimensional conscious reality, which is the whole cosmos. It's a conscious quantum hologram. It makes total sense that when these kinds of experiences are happening and people are in a deep conscious meditative state and there is this kind of energetic field that is concentrated in a physical three-dimensional space, like a crop circle, or during a steady contact event, that there could be these corollaries within the physical body, where there are these amazingly beautiful things that happen because things come back into harmonic, things come back into balance, you see. That's what I see happening. I'm so glad you shared this story about this elderly woman that had that happen, because we've had identical things as that happen. Not necessarily in crop circles, but just, during our contact expeditions.
Absolutely. It's fascinating to me, and, I think that you appreciate much more than most because of your medical background, your expertise. I know I've shared this with you and the CSETI audience, in Rio Rico and the last time we were together, I think.
Yes.
The experience that Cynthia and I shared during one night that we were woken, and I raised this, Steve, because of the fact that we were clearly and obviously given information in the middle of the night, both deep asleep, waking separately, moments, seconds apart, being unable to move, being absolutely paralyzed to the bed, and yet being given what I've only ever been able to describe as downloads of information pertaining to very simple geometry of an equilateral triangle. And here I was given my part of, the placement of these designs on the landscape of our planet, forming equilateral triangle, giving me information which was in front of my nose, but I hadn't actually kind of seen it, was the placement of Stonehenge in that geometry on the landscape. This was all given in a matter of moments, and as the level of connection diminished, like turning down a dimmer switch, that connection, which was so obviously different to the norm, suddenly it's beginning to fade away, and then I could move again. And I looked at Cynthia, and she was just staring into the room, onto the ceiling of the room, still laid in bed, unable to move, as I had been. And now she is given, this is the reason I really particularly raised this, she is now given the same information related to an equilateral triangle and the ratios of places within it pertaining to the chakra points of the human body for healing. And as this kind of speaks to exactly what you've said, and as it left her, that experience left her, she looked at me, I'm staring at her, she said, "What just happened?" And I said, "What happened to you?" And she said, "There was this triangle." And it's like, oh my God, that's what I've just had too. And of course we clicked the switch on for the light switch. We sat there bewildered and made full notes. But she is still working with that now, trying to utilize what she believes she was given and why she was given it. And it fits right precisely to what you've said, is that this is knowledge. I don't know whether it's something we're supposed to know, whether it's something that we've lost along the way, whether this is part of the transition into a new period of time when we are intended to know this and will know it one way or another. But it's fascinating stuff.
Well, I think it's all of the above, and actually, during this CSETI conference when that was happening, as you know, if you go back to the origins of CSETI, and people go to cseti.org, they'll see this. There's a photograph on that site of an equilateral triangle crop circle that happened at Oliver's Castle back in 1992. And the way that came about was that we were at Woodborough Hill, and there were about a dozen of us. And
plays the game.
Yes, and we went up there, and no one on planet Earth knew, and we didn't know as a group even before we went up on the hill that very, very night. And we were wanting to communicate with the intelligences making the authentic crop circles. And, there had already been the Barbary Castle and other circles that had a equilateral triangle motif or leitmotif that kind of went through. But we went up there, but we didn't know. And we were sitting in a circle, and we were going to go into our deep meditation using the Vedic meditation. And then once we got into unbounded quiet mind, we were going to transmit to the crop circle makers into the ether of unbounded mind, as it were, a shape that we were going to ask the crop circle makers to make. And we decided on a simple equilateral triangle, 3 circles connected by lines. And do you know that very night, within line sight of where we were there, that what we now call the CSETI triangles, become our logo, appeared in a field, and a farmer discovered it in the wee hours of the morning when he was going to go out and begin harvesting in an adjacent field. And when we went up to Oliver's Castle and looked down on it, it was as if the cosmic mind and these ET intelligences had picked that up out of our mind and laid it in the field perfectly. And no one, we were up there doing our contact protocols, sent out this image, and all went to bed. No one knew about it. The next morning, within not even the next morning, because he was out at 4 or 5 in the morning, and we had left our site probably at 1 in the morning. And there it was. And when they did the studies on that particular crop circle, they had found all kinds of electromagnetic anomalies in the cell walls and what have you. But what was interesting is that same motif continued when we decided to move here to Virginia. We were debating, where should we move? And I want to be out in the country where it's very pure and this and that. And we came up here to look at a house that's on, and where I am speaking from right now is not too far from Thomas Jefferson's home. And I have to explain, a lot of people don't know who Thomas Jefferson was. He wrote the Declaration of Independence, and people say, well, everyone knows that. I said, no, they don't. I talk about this all the time. Nobody knows who he is anymore. So anyway, but there's a man who, of course, founded the country and wrote the Declaration of Independence, and his estate is just east of me, about 20 minutes. And we were looking at this farm, and the man who was showing us the property, his family is a big landowner around here, and it's the Faulkner family. And he showed us this property. I was debating whether to move here, whether to get this property or not. And do you know the very day that my wife and I decided to get this property, which has about 65 acres, and which in line sight of Swannanoa, where Walter Russell did the Universal One, by the way, we're 10 minutes from there. That very day that we made that decision, that crop circle appeared. That is an equilateral triangle on the land of the man who sold us this property.
Oh, my.
And I didn't know about it. It was on the front cover of the Charlottesville Weekly paper, Virginia paper. And, no one in the world, no one but my wife and I knew that we were even looking up here to move. So you have to understand that these beings and this level of intelligence that's interfacing with this dimension and this world operates in ways that the Vedic masters understand, and people who have the Propuja network, or everyone listening who understands consciousness understand. But to the average linear reductionist person, it just seems impossible. And yet it's the impossible has now become the everyday. And see, what I see happening into the future is that the things that we consider the impossible and the miraculous and the absolutely unattainable will be the manifest and the obvious and the everyday.
I believe that. I absolutely do. And it can be very personal, can't it? As you said, there was a design like, well, here you are. Does this make you feel at home? Does this kind of confirm that that's your house? It can be very personal. And I think it's absolutely appropriate time, Steve, if I may. This I know you are unaware of completely. Before we came on air, I was trying to finalize some information and vouch for its authenticity, its correctness in as far as data was concerned before I said anything for this program, because Just a few hours ago, I received an email from, and I've been told that I can say this on air. I hadn't the permission up to a few moments before we connected, from Annie Haslam. She's a very famous singer, Annie Haslam of the Renaissance, British pop group, the Renaissance,
Right.
from right from the 60s, 70s, and they're still doing out their gigs today. Annie took a photograph of what was the transition from heavy rain into snow on the 31st of October last year. She'd not looked at the photographs until a few hours ago and was astounded by what was in one of them, looking out into her back garden. Well, she sent me the photograph in high resolution. I've not seen anything like it in my life. We've tried to eliminate in these first few hours the obvious questions of reflectivity in the glass. Was there anything in the room that could have kind of reflected on the glass like this, etc.? All of the obvious things appear to have been eliminated. I've just forwarded a copy of it to Bruce Maccabee, who's looking at it as we speak. And there are now measurements being taken in the backyard of this house in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, to try and get the angles established. But the focus of these two gold-colored discs that are hovering about, I would say, about 7 or 8 feet off of her backyard, are bathing the plants in golden light. I mean, you look at the material, you look at the quality of the light, and you say straight away, this is gold. I mean, there is no other way of looking at these objects and not believing that that's what it is you're looking at.
Right.
There's raised portions on the top of the domes, which I'll have on the website and will forward to you the moment I'm cleared by her to do so.
Excellent.
For the listeners to look at. But I think this is going to be a very important photograph, Steve. I've not seen anything like it, and Bruce came back very tentatively a few moments ago, just before we came on air, and he too is very excited by this. So anyway, I thought to break that to you because the second sentence in my email in response to this photograph to Annie was that I'll be on the air with Dr. Stephen Greer within the hour, it's like, well, here's another gift for who better to show something of this kind to would be yourself, the very guy, the very center of the biggest investigation into this subject that we've ever undertaken, I think. And so there you go. I said I would convey it to you.
Well, thank you. That's so exciting. Well, it reminds me, if you have, of course, if you look at one of our early books, Extraterrestrial Contact, the Evidence and Implications, that came out about 10 years ago, there's a picture of a golden disc like that over Vancouver Island, British Columbia, that's been analyzed by NASA, by everybody, and it's in broad daylight. And then the pièce de résistance is what happened about 6 months ago. And we were in Crestone, Colorado, doing one of our contact expeditions. And we had somebody with a very excellent, I think it's a 25-megapixel Nikon camera. And we had set up to do the puja, and I had walked over, and you had met Sherry Adamak, who helped us for years and then was murdered by this cabal who killed Bill Colby and killed her, tried to kill me. A whole bunch of people almost died within a very short period of time. I was the only one that survived. And what happened, we were by the tree where we had placed Sherry's ashes. It's on the land I own in Crestone, Colorado. And it's now a very sacred place for us. We go there every year with our team. And those of you who are interested in joining us can go to cseti.org and see the dates and where it is. We're there, and then straight ahead of us, due east, is the only authentic Tibetan stupa in the West that the Dalai Lama asked our friend and CSETI supporter, Ambassador Jim George of Canada, to build there, which is in direct line sight. Now, the stream that comes down by this Tibetan stupa comes right through the middle of my land. And between Sherry's tree and where this stream is, which is all very sacred energy, I'm walking out there making, it looks like a collateral triangle, like Cynthia, like your wife got, where with my mind and my two palms out, I make a triangle, and I'm going out making contact and inviting the beings in. And this man is taking photographs. And over between where we are at Sherry's tree, where her ashes are scattered, and this sacred, they call it Magic Creek in that part of the world, because it has so many, is this pure golden disc, literally 3 feet above the ground.
How large
in the
did you say it
photograph.
was, Steve? That's extraordinary. I didn't know about that.
Well, there's a whole, we haven't, we're pulled in so many directions. What we're going to be doing, and one of the things I'm announcing today, because this is 2012, is that we have decided, I can't say that we've inked it yet, but there is an Emmy award-winning documentary filmmaker who wants to team up with us and put together a documentary that has all of this information in it, as well as dozens of people who the public have never heard from. This is the year of the pivotal point where we must move into an entirely new civilization and sort of shed the old skin of the old one, the closing of that old era. Now, most people look at 2012 in sort of these sort of Hollywood stereotypical apocalyptic terms, but I always say, well, it depends on what you're attached to. If you're attached to the old structures, it is apocalyptic, but if you're looking at what's emerging, not going to emerge, but it's actually manifesting right now all around us, even in your friend's backyard there in Pennsylvania during the snowstorm. This is emerging around us all the time, and it's beautiful, and it's spiritual, and it's physical, and it's every dimension pulled together. And that's what people need to understand. It's not this or that, it's all of it. And very exciting.
It absolutely is, and that's wonderfully put too. I don't think there's any question that anybody who's deeply involved in these gambit of research efforts know that something very profound is happening. There is nobody that can get away from turning your television on and off within 10 minutes that wouldn't know that we're seeing something very different transpiring here. When Cynthia and I were researching it was about 6 or 7 months solid research, nothing else, looking at the 2012 prophecy,
right.
The Complete Idiot's Guide series, the only instruction we were given is that they really didn't want all of this blackness, all of this, the movie that had already kind of,
right.
Oh my goodness me, frightening everybody to death.
Right.
But they did want the truth. They wanted it thoroughly researched and investigated. So we engaged a big effort, and we spoke to NASA people on the technical side of the astronomy rather. I engaged personally, a former FBI anti-terrorist agent, Alan Huimet, I can now say, who is a very odd combination of FBI anti-terrorism and astrologer, a really strange combination, but he was looking at that. We were looking at all kinds of areas of expertise and came to see there is no question that this is a decoupling, and this I think is good. Of course, some people see it as not good, but if you look at the logical progression of a decoupling of the systems that had to decouple to introduce an entirely new era, then that's what had to happen. And the Mayans saw it coming. This is what we've got. You could run through the Earth changes, and we can put headlines on each one of these that kind of make the point with Japan, largest earthquake in living memory, as far as the scale of it was concerned, and all of the changes and horrible ones at that came with it. But these are earth changes. We're looking at religious and political stress, tensions that are building and must build, because we have to get some common sense into this. Truth will take us to a better place, and out of that combination of religion and politics needs to sort itself out. So, obviously, as we know, we're looking at the the Wall Street Occupy movement,
right.
Arab Spring. These are obviously signs of the tensions that are building. They're not going away. Governments knew they were coming. They've planned for them and trying to deal. They're trying to think. I think they're still trying to get a foothold on how they can regulate or control and manipulate ultimately what's happening with the population. But at this time, They're unable to find it. There's nothing making sense as far as old politics and political ways are concerned. It isn't happening. So, but it's because it's something new. So you've got that, and you can run down through the list of trend lines, Steve. With the population now has already exceeded the 7 billion. So we're moving on in that direction. So where something has to give, and it will. Something better will come out of it. Climate change, we've mentioned. Human health is something you're very conversant with. New viruses, etc., that were part of an equation. The economy, well, that speaks for itself. Just look at it. Europe
Right.
and the United
Shambles.
States.
Right.
It's an absolute shambles. All the lies and greed that were part of bringing it this way. And so one can go on. Global warming.
Well, and if you look at all of it, it's all because it's been built on a foundation of us versus them, divisiveness, greed, and all the lower chakras, the lower energies, and that all of that is basically imploding upon itself. And so I tell people, yes, you can focus on that. I think what's really important and exciting is to focus on what are we going to create in its place. It's the phoenix from the ashes. So I tell people, yes, you can dwell on all that. What's important is to say, yes, that is inevitable, because the foundations are so lamentably defective and corrupt and moribund that it just can't hold any further. However, and this is what's key, is that from higher consciousness and from higher dimensions and even from other interstellar systems, there is knowledge and information and contact and even science and technology that are here. They're not coming. They are already here, and they have been bottled up because folks who want to maintain the status quo don't want to see this big change. I mean, let's consider the fact that T. Townsend Brown and Tesla and others had anti-gravity and new energy things back 50 to 100 years ago. Here we still are fighting over oil, about ready to go to war with Iran over closing the Straits of Hormuz.
Yeah.
So the thing is that, it's like the old Chinese saying, unless we change directions, we're likely to end up where we're going. So, that direction can lead to where it's leading. But what we have to visualize is that is going to give way and has to give way to a new time, a golden era that it isn't going to come through a Ouija board. It's going to come through efforts of the people coming together. Because let's face it,
I quite agree.
The vast majority of the public are not invested in traditional ethnic and religious strife or traditional economic systems where Goldman Sachs and a handful of other corporations rule the roost, and where 7 billion people, 2.8 billion people don't even have plumbing or toilets or anything. This is not a system that the vast majority of humans, who are for the most part kind and want to just go forward, care about. So the reality is, and this is why we view this, we're all in 2012. The CSETI and Disclosure Project are going to go full bore on this. Now, we expect the attacks on us to increase, because in the last year, 6 months to a year, both federal attacks, federal government attacks, all kinds of attacks have happened on us, hacking, you name it, death threats, stalking. There's an FBI file open now because of the death threats and stalking I've had. But the fact is, that you're going to expect, but you have to go all in right now, because this is not the time to hold back, my friends, people who are listening. We have to go all in, and that's what we're going to do with the release of all this information, streaming everything, things that didn't even exist 3 to 5 years ago that we can do now, where we can reach through a YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and the Internet and other sites, untold numbers of people with all this information, now that we have the means. And particularly someone, because frankly, you don't want me editing anything. I'm I'm not technically oriented, to say the least. But now that we have the attention and interest of an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and documentary, I think what we can do is put things together, because we have so much material, in a way that will be pivotal going forward in 2012 into the years that follow. And also our contact expeditions, we're going to be, those of you who want to come, you're invited to join us on Marco Island in Florida in the Gulf of Mexico. Last year when we were there, we're going to be there in April this year, and we have a park that's a state park that we have reserved only for our use at night. It's fantastic. When we were there last year, we have a videotape that is of literally dozens of transdimensional objects that are bleeding into this dimension that are literally 100 to 200 yards from us. It goes on for 3.5 hours.
My goodness.
You cannot believe this. When we can get this, it is unbelievable. Everyone who was there, so we're going to do this again. We're going to be at the same place. Those who want to join us on this expedition, the information is at cseti.org. And it's limited to a small number, about 20 people. But what's exciting about it is that this was coming from out over the Gulf of Mexico. And when this contact happened was literally within minutes after we did a puja in the center of the circle, and we were honoring all the ascended masters and honoring all of our ancestors who passed over into the worlds of light and asking them to help us make this transition into this new time. And within minutes of that puja ending, literally within minutes, and through the night scope binoculars, you can't believe, but even with the naked eye, dozens of these objects. And it wasn't like a structured craft. It was more beautiful than that. It wasn't one, and the area that it was emerging from was probably about 3 to 5 miles across. So there was this energy field that came in out from over the Gulf of Mexico that was transdimensional, and then into our dimension are all these brilliant white objects that are coming down to the sand, down over the mangroves, over the lagoon right in front of us, and it's on film. You absolutely cannot believe this. So this is what's happening, and this story has got to be told by someone who's a better film person than I am. But, at a certain point, we're not only going to make this, but we're going to just start streaming stuff onto YouTube. But see, right now we don't have anyone. We're going to actually try to get someone who can do this almost full-time, who does nothing but get this stuff out there in a constant barrage of information, evidence, witness testimony that just won't stop unless they take down the Internet. They'll have to take down the Internet.
Yeah, I think they're trying to do that too, aren't they?
Yeah, oh yes, that's what this new bill is about. Yes,
yeah. Yeah, as we speak, Wikipedia and others have come offline to protest that.
Correct.
But I think what you're doing is absolutely right. No more time, as we said the last time we were together, for sitting on the fence. There's no more time to be grey and woolly. This is black or white. This is it. This is the time. If we are to focus upon and to mature the coherence of respect and compassion for one another, then we've got some ground to make up. As we know, if we were to look at the period of your work, the period of my work, and many others, what's it been telling us? I think it's been highlighting and exposing the devious nature of a large segment of society, of which, the results, what we see today, it's leading us by the nose through a transitional period towards truth. Right. There is no guarantee, though, Steve, that we have learned or that we will change, but it offers us truth from which we can choose to do so. And so this is it. This is the moment. You know where you are in this and how solid it is. I've gotten to focus now upon where I believe that matters on my part of the equation, which is human consciousness and the interaction of a higher mind with humanity. And let's go for it. We've still negative entities that are here on our planet in good numbers, and let them know the battle is on.
Right, absolutely, and that ultimately it's a lot of people have to. We need not just an Arab Spring or this spring or Wall Street. We need a global spring. So this is the global spring. The dawn's already happened. We're out of winter. This is the global springtime, and so this is what we have to potentiate in 2012. And would you like to share with people how they might get hold of you? I know you have a website.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, they can certainly come in through the website, and, a contact button comes right to my desk, so anything and everything on those contact buttons does reach me, and I read it and I respond. So it's colinandrews.net, and the sections there on the work that's being done with consciousness, the crop circles, UFO, and a number of other topics which I believe are connected.
And your 2012, I think the 2012 book was also mentioned on that side. Yes.
Yes, it is. Thank you. That's one of the newer books, 2012. That's the Complete Idiot's Guide to 2012, which really and truly is now coming into its end, not just simply because it is 2012, but it was actually published 2 years ago, and the trend lines, and the information that was then prophecy, which is now fact, I think is impressive in of itself, if we may say so ourselves.
Yeah,
but it's not our prophecy. It's the science and it's the Mayan, and these were scholars, and their work is now coming to be seen for what it is.
Well, and for those who are interested in these contact expeditions with me, you can find out more at cseti.org. And also the information for disclosure and ending secrecy on all of this at disclosureproject.org. And Colin, I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your time with us this hour on the World Puja Network.
That's my pleasure, Steve.
And I'd like to thank all the folks at the World Puja Network for giving us this time to give you our perspective and information and news of what's happening in this subject. So keep looking up, and it's an exciting year, and God bless all of you.
Okay, that was Stephen Greer and Colin Andrews, an expert on crop circles. And quite incredible, the kinds of things both of these men have been involved with, Greer over the years, and also Andrews in his crop circle research. I'll take a moment to remind you that you're listening to Gary Wheeler at High Strangeness on WRFR 93.3 FM in Rockland and 99.3 in Camden, streaming on WRFR.org. I really like that quote that he gave, that the Chinese quote that unless we change directions, we'll likely end up where we're going. I think that especially applies to the whole climate change thing, that if we don't get on the stick and change the energy, that we're heading for a great deal of problems, some of which we'll probably have anyway, but it could be much worse, which I think in a sense we're starting to do, which is a great sign, and probably one of the changes that came as a result of 2012. It's been 3 years, and I think a lot kind of has happened in that time. Okay, the next short audio is about the science involved in investigating the crop circles. There's a lot of controversy for years around who's actually making these circles, and there's a whole group that says it's has been done by men because these two guys came forward about 15 years ago, two barflies, and said they had created them all, and they went out with their boards and their ropes and showed how they could make a very bad circle, actually, using this method. And so the newspapers all came out with, "Oh, mystery is solved. All these circles are man-made," and that kind of information has stuck around, and people actually, believe that even until today. If I ask somebody about crop circles, they'll say, "Oh yeah, they're all man-made. Those two guys came out and said they did it," which is totally fallacious information. But that's how it is when you're trying to hide something, and the media goes along with it. So there's tremendous controversy around this. But anybody who has studied this crop circles and how they're made and how the tremendous complexity of the geometry, it's extremely evident that they're not man-made, and most of them aren't. But there are some that are man-made, and people who are experienced can tell immediately those that are, because they don't have the exactness of the ones that are made by the others. And there is no real message in them. And it happens over this last week. I was looking at different audios on the crop circle issue, came across a National Geographic documentary on crop circles. Now, this is National Geographic, the magazine probably that has the most integrity of anyone in the world. And, as a kid, you used to look at it. Of course, you were looking for the nudes in it, but it was still thought of as being the best magazine out there when it came to information and giving credible information. Well, this documentary I watched was pretty biased, and it was very biased towards showing that the crop circles were man-made, and they didn't even mention extraterrestrial possibility of making them. They called the ones that people said were made not by humans, they called them paranormal events. But they had an experiment in this film whereby a mathematician made up this geometry, this complicated, not really too complicated, diagram of circles, large circles and then small ones, all touching each other. And the challenge was for crop circle makers to make this circle in one night, which they did, but the final result showed that there was a lot of mistakes, and they were very evident. And also, there was a time when, if you remember, there was a cattle disease called foot and mouth disease, which was destroying the cattle in England. And during that period, which was, I think, about 15, 20 years ago, they basically closed off all the fields to any public. In fact, they put fences around them, so nobody could really enter any of those fields. And it was a huge fine if they caught you in there. And in that year, there were still many, many crop circles made. Now, this particular audio is by a scientific expert who worked with a group called the BLT Research Group on investigating basically how the wheat stalks and other stalks are bent without damage when they are bent over in a crop circle. Now, this is the scientific evidence which basically proves that many of these circles are not man-made, because all the ones who are man-made, when they make them with the boards, they crush the wheat and they break it. Where when they're bent over this other way, the wheat still is alive, so the farmers can still harvest it. Where with the human ones, the farmer loses that crop. So time is running out, so I'm going to put this audio on. I think you'll find it very interesting.
Okay, now this is an excellent example of how we can tell the difference between an authentic crop formation and crop circle and a man-made crop circle. What we see here is something called elongated nodes. Now what happens is when an authentic crop circle is formed, it's subjected to intense amounts of microwave radiation, and this causes a lot of heat inside the actual structure of the stem here. And in turn, the node then expands. And when it expands, it actually causes the stem to bend at 90 degrees and hence become flattened. And this is how the formations are created. And you can see that the crops are not actually destroyed. So we need to understand that they are trying to poison the well, and I've seen a lot of man-made formations this year. Now, intuitively, I can pretty much tell the difference between the man-made formations and the authentic ones. Unfortunately, some people can't, and I have seen a lot of the man-made formations being circulated around the internet. And unfortunately, what this does is poison the well. What we need to look for when we're looking at an authentic crop circle is perfect symmetry, sacred geometry, and basically no errors at all. When we see the man-made ones, you can quite often see they're messy, they aren't very symmetrical, there's mistakes that have been made, some of the lines aren't very straight. To me, I can tell straight away if one has been man-made because it just does not have that look of perfect symmetry. So the reason that they're going to try and poison the well is because they don't want us to know that these formations are encoded with very, very important information. And a lot of this information seems to be correlating to what I'm finding about the transit of Venus and how that affects our sun, and also how the transit of Venus and what's happening to our sun signifies that we are at the end of an age. We are at the end of the 26,000 year precession of the equinoxes, and we're leaving the age of Pisces and about to go into the age of Aquarius, which is an age of enlightenment and higher learning and higher consciousness. Now, we can already see that with the expansion of consciousness around us, with so many people waking up. So, of course, the powers that be do not want this information being relayed to us. And so they try and confuse this with throwing in all of these man-made formations to basically have us, you know, chasing our tails instead of paying attention to the real information. Now, my thoughts are that Venus is a signifier. It's a marker in time. And the mayor also said that Venus was a marker of time. They used it to mark time. And so when we saw the last transit of Venus, to me, it definitely has created some type of interaction between itself and the sun. And we can see now that since the beginning of July, well, basically it did start just after the transit of Venus, but the beginning of July, we really started seeing the solar activity ramping up. And we're actually now seeing really unusual events on the sun that have never been observed before. Not to mention that Greenland lost 97% of its surface ice around the time of the X-flare that we just experienced. And that was on the 12th of July. But just prior to that X-flare, there was a huge amount of solar activity. And if you have a look at the heart magnetometer, you will see that there was extreme magnetic pulses and electric currents being directed towards our planet. Now, this is nothing to fear. This is basically part of the cycle. And while we're going through this shift and while we're raising ourselves consciously, this is happening to Mother Earth as well. And as I said, all of this information seems to be encoded into these crop circles, and this is what I'm actually discovering. Now, because a lot of my research is going to relay back to crop circles sometimes, I did want to bring this information out because, of course, a lot of people that don't want this information to be brought out to the public are going to try and discredit it by saying that all crop circles are just man-made. And of course, we also have these people that cannot move outside their little box of indoctrination, and they just dismiss crop circles as being, you know, total nonsense and man-made. I feel really sorry for those types of people. They are definitely missing out on the importance of what these crop circles mean to us and these times that we're in. But anyway, I just thought it was important that I showed you that there is a way to compare the difference between these authentic formations and the man-made ones. And there's actually a research team called the BLT research team, and it has John Berg. It also has a biophysicist, W.C. Levengood, and Nancy Talbot in the team. And they've examined thousands of plants and soils for more than 250 crop circles in 9 different countries. And the samples taken from within the flattened crop areas are compared to the plant and soil controls taken at various distances outside of the flattened areas. And now 3 papers have been published in a scientific journal discussing the crop circle results. And according to Nancy Talbot, a 4th paper is soon to be published. Now, the scientific evidence also shows that there are 3 known energies involved in creating these crop circles: microwave radiation, strong magnetic fields, and unusual electric pulses. So, you know, there is definitely a phenomenon here, and to ignore it would be foolish. But as I said, they do not want us actually relaying any of this information. They do not want us decoding these crop circles and understanding what the information is within them. And for anyone that still believes that all crop circles are man-made, then I would ask, why then do military helicopters descend upon newly formed circles? They obviously are interested in something. Anyway, I will link this underneath the video for all of you that are on my Facebook group. For all of you that aren't in my group and would like to join, there will be a link underneath as well, and you can have a look at this photo in more detail. But I did want to bring this to your attention. I thought it was really interesting, and of course I would like to direct people to this video when I start bringing out more information in regards to my research and the correlations I'm finding to certain crop circles. Okay guys, well, I will leave it here, and as always, peace out.
Okay, there you have it. And I think that's pretty convincing. And if you go on the internet and put in some of that information, the science of crop circles, you'll get a lot of reinforcement around her claims about how the wheat is bent over. And in 2 weeks, when I get back, a program will have Nancy Talbot, and she's an expert as well in the science of the crop circles. In the meantime, if you want to read a good article about the crop circles and how they're made, you can go to my Facebook page, which is titled GW News 2. That's the number 2. And there you'll find a whole webpage about ETs and flying saucers and lots of information that I have given you on this show and will continue to give you. And so it's a very interesting webpage. So please go there and you can get this article. There's a link to this article. It's in plain language, not complicated scientific language. Okay, that's pretty much it for today. As always, embrace the mystery and embrace the mystery that is you. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care.